This is Jim Collison live from the Heartland Developers Conference here in Omaha, fall of 2014. Hard to believe it's fall already. I'm here with Rusty Devine. Rusty, thanks for taking a few minutes to be with us.
Thanks for having me here today.
You bet. You did your session this morning. Talk a little bit about, just kind of give me the high-level overview of what you covered.
Sure. I spent a lot of my career as a custom software developer, working for different places, Nebraska and Washington State. And we learned, through the years that the Agile process would help us, but it was always difficult to reconcile that with a fixed price, fixed schedule type of project, which is generally what we would win. And so, a lot of times we would get the project, we'd kind of work it in an Agile way with iterations, but in the end the customer just wasn't 100% satisfied with their custom software, which was unfortunate. It was very frustrating, how can we do better? So we learned of this requirements gathering process from a guy in our peer group, so a company like ours in a different region, and decided this was actually going to work for us. So it was a way to get into a customer and say, look, we know you have this big idea for what this software needs to be, but we're going to help you kind of narrow that down, figure out what your priorities are for this, and then work it in a way that puts you at the steering wheel, so that when you start to see this and realize that it kind of needs to go in a different direction, we're going to keep it flexible. So instead of tying it down with a contract like we used to, we actually say, okay, well, let's substitute this in, take this out, and kind of make it more flexible.
Sure. Can you talk about your current organization? And if you don't want to use the name, that's fine too. Some don't have permission to do that. But the organization you work for, kind of how they're structured, and maybe some of the business processes that you currently work with and the challenges that you have.
Yeah. The process that I talked about today, we developed at Five Nines. It's a company, Lincoln in Omaha, that does mostly outsourced IT support. But then about a year ago, I left that company, and now I work for Nebraska Department of Roads. Oh. And so it's actually
Is that a state-run organization?
Yeah, state-run organization. Okay. It's a really good team, though. We do lots and lots of Agile stuff, embracing Agile, lots of unit tests and stand-ups and Kanban boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good.
What kind of software? So what does the Department of Roads use?
Sure. Well, the Department of Roads has at least 30 years of mainframe applications that have been written, and now we're starting to convert those to more modern, like MVC, WPF type of apps. Get them off the mainframe. The mainframe actually costs a lot of money to have programs on it.
It does.
The state kind of owns that hardware, and they charge us to use it.
IBM mainframes, RPG, stuff like that?
I think so. Okay. I'm not super. We call it the offense, the dark side, but mostly because it has a black screen.
Sure.
We all love.
Yeah.
We all love the programs, but
yeah.
So that's what we'll move a little bit of a piece off at a time, and in the meantime, we still have to work on integrating the two sets of data while we're shutting one part off on the current system and turning it on the new system.
So are most of the processes that you're currently working on moving? Is it migration? You're moving and migrating a lot of what they have into what's new?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because you think, okay, this program is 30 years old, but there's still people working on the current system and making changes to it while we're trying to migrate it to the new system, and so they'll change something, and then we'll have to change it on our side.
Right.
And,
it's the common problem in any migration. When you cut it over and there's double entry and all that live data migrations.
It really speaks to software's never done. It's not done until people stop using it.
Yeah. So walk me through a couple of the points then that you talked about in your session.
Sure.
Now that we've got all the background taken care of. Yeah.
So this process that we worked on was to go into a customer's environment and help them. All the customers get together, so everyone who might be a representative user, product owner, that kind of thing, getting together in a room and talk about what they think this solution should be. And it's important to do that because they come with an idea, and each one has a slightly different idea, and they might think, oh yeah, we all understand this the same way. But what you find out is when you get them in a room and with the development team and everyone you can get in there, is that they realize their ideas and priorities are a little bit different. So it gives us a chance to learn about their problem and start developing a solution, but it also gives them a chance to agree on what that problem is and what the solution looks like. So we take them through this exercise to kind of brainstorm what this solution should do, all of the features, and then we help them to take those features and prioritize them and say, okay, look, which ones do you really have to have? Which one's more important than the other? And once they get done doing that, they have a shared vision of this solution where they all agree, yeah, this is what this is, and this is what it's going to do, and this is what's important. And then we say, okay, now, starting from that highest priority one, show us that first feature that isn't absolutely necessary for us to start, using this system. And so that forces them to take this big idea and shrink it down to something that's more manageable, which we also found was really important because once you get to that point where you can show them that first step, this is kind of we call it the core feature set or the minimum viable product.
Sure.
By then they'll have new ideas, new ways, new priorities, new things they want to do, and so it's not like we're telling them you can't have all of this. It's just we're saying let's start here because by the time we get there, you're going to want to go in a different direction.
Yeah, kind of the nature of Agile in a lot of ways is that self-discovery process, or what I like to call kind of the continuous discovery process. And A plus B, the next step isn't always C, even though you think it might be. As you get there, you're like, oh, actually, we probably want to go to E or whatever, right? It's a government agency. Those are notoriously known for not moving quickly. Was this a quick moving process for you?
We don't do this at Department of Roads, actually.
Okay,
So we were doing this at 5.9s for custom software development.
Yeah.
At Nebraska Department of Roads, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, talk about that, because it's government has its own. It's not good or bad. It's just different. Right? Yeah.
And this process works a lot better when someone comes to you with an idea, and you need to help them focus and say, let's prioritize this. At my current job, a lot of what we're doing is taking an existing system and moving it to a different version.
Sure.
And the process I talked about today doesn't work great for that.
Yeah.
It really shines when you need to get people to agree on something. Some of the stuff, though, that we do at Rhodes is improving an existing system while we're migrating it.
Right.
And there we have attempted to do an agile assessment and have had some pushback saying, I can't dedicate the 4 hours or whatever it's going to take to do this. But
yeah. Well, and let's be honest, I think going legacy to new is probably a harder process than just starting from scratch in some ways, right? There's some unique challenges associated with that and some interesting preconceived notions about what they can and can't live with because they've been living with it, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things we've found too is that their current system works very well for them. A modern designer might look at it and say that there's no graphics, it's just text on a screen. But they are so fast with it. They have all the shortcut keys memorized. They know how to get to each screen really quick without ever touching their mouse. And so moving them into more of a web interface is a different paradigm. And even though to a maybe younger person or it might look better, to them it's not as good sometimes.
I've seen a lot of organizations go to this classic model and new model, right, to kind of to do both, because you might have some folks who want to see it one way. But you could think about putting a screen, that's the old, right, it mimics the old, and it's really just the keys work, and so it's like, hey, no, this is my classic setup, and then for new folks coming in, maybe they shift to more, I don't know.
That's exactly right.
There are some, when we talk about productivity, sometimes we think new is always best, and
it's not.
That old system, now there's some reasons you got to move it off of the mainframe, obviously,
cost
right?
Being
at that
a
point.
Factor,
No, right on. And so it's time to move it to a more modern platform. That doesn't mean their workflow hasn't been optimized for the last 10 or 15 years.
Exactly.
Right along those lines. So kind of a good thing to think about. What kind of questions, so when you do the presentation, what were they asking you when you were done? Because that's a telltale sign of what they wanted to hear.
Yeah, sure. I got a couple of questions about, specific scenarios, like how do you handle when a customer sees your stuff and they're like, no, wait, this isn't what we wanted at all,
At the end, or as you're getting close to the end?
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't say that. Yes, you did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why, we feel it's important to try and head that off as much as possible by, in the beginning when we collect stories, we always assign conditions of acceptance to say what this has to do before it's done. Every day we encourage the product owner or some representative to be on a stand-up call with us. And then every 2 weeks, we actually show the demo to as many of the customers as we can and get them to test it out. So if after 2 weeks they see it and it should be just 2 weeks worth of work and they're like, this doesn't work for us, that's not so bad. We can go back and fix that. But if we did go out for 2 months, that's going to be painful.
Yeah.
So.
Do you find, though, I sometimes find when I'm in this space that the stakeholders lose interest in some of those meetings and they stop coming because they're like, it's the same. It's, there's very few changes. And then they themselves kind of get disconnected after a couple months. And then when you come back to them, you're like, okay. And then, do you find that happens sometimes too? I mean, you almost have to bring cookies to the meeting so people will come?
Cookies is a good idea. In fact, it's even harder. You can get them to the meetings, but it's even harder to get them to test it, to get them to use it.
Yes.
And you think, you're paying
tips on that.
So much
I think
money.
people would pay for that.
We were frustrated by that, and we wouldn't actually do this, but we kicked around the idea of saying, if you don't test it, we're going to charge you more for this because it's going to cost more. By the time you actually use it at the end, you're going to say, no, you need to change all these things.
That's not that's not a financial model for not participating.
Yeah.
Is not a bad. I know. You talk about Department of Roads. I know lately a lot of municipalities have changed to if you finish the job quicker, you get paid more, right? Type deal. Yeah. Maybe a financial incentive that way. That's probably not a bad idea. Any other questions that you got along those lines that you want to share?
Let's see. I can't think. I'm just blanking on the other ones.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure I don't move on too quick. Last thing that we kind of want to cover is it's 45 minutes. That's quick. Very, very quick. Anything when you walked out, you're like, I wish I would have said that.
I did find myself hurrying through. I practiced this plenty, but today I felt like I was going to be talking fast since I was in front of a live audience, but I must have been taking my time, so I had to kind of whirl it up. And by the time I got to the last slide, I was just like, okay, thanks, that's it. Yeah. Without a real wrap-up conclusion.
Right. Yeah.
But really, if I had
thinking back,
more time,
what would you want to say?
I would change the talk completely, and instead of give a talk with PowerPoint slides, I would do an actual assessment with people and have them participate and throw out their features and come up with an objective together. So that's what I would do.
That's a good idea. We do some of those if you ever take any Gallup training. A lot of our training is that way. It's not talking to. It's a little bit of explanation, and then let's dive right into an exercise. So that's a good. Maybe you'll get an opportunity to do this again. Come back
maybe
around.
A hands-on lab.
Right on. I like that. Anything else that we didn't cover that you want to bring up?
No, that's
all right.
That's pretty good.
Well, hey, I appreciate Rusty. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. A little bonus content for the conference here. If you are interested, you're watching the video, I will get some additional information for Rusty, and it'll be available right below the video window, right down there somewhere in the description, and then you can contact him or however that'll be your opportunity to put some information out there for you as well. But Rusty, thanks for taking. Did I just call you Randy?
Nope.
Oh, good. Rusty, thanks for taking a few minutes for
Thanks,
doing it.
Jim.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.